Imagine two brothers born of the same land, sharing river, skies, culture, and blood, yet separated by fear, by politics, and by pain. Imagine 7 decades of silence broken only by the sound of sirens, gunfire, and grief. Now imagine a truth so powerful. It could end this cycle, not just with weapons, but with wisdom. Today, you're not just watching a speech, you're stepping into history, into a truth buried beneath headlines, into a voice echoing from 1947 to today. Before this video ends, what scientists found in the Quran will challenge what you thought was possible. Stay with me. This isn't just about India or Pakistan. This is about us all. India and Pakistan, two nations forged from the crucible of colonialism, have been locked in a complex and often violent relationship since their partition in 1947. This first keynote, endless conflict since 1947, is not merely a historical marker. It is a reflection of decades of mistrust, missed opportunities, political miscalculations, and human tragedies that continue to shape South Asia's geopolitics. To understand the depth of this statement, one must revisit the origins of the India-Pakistan conflict, examine the key moments that have defined their animosity, and analyze the psychological and ideological divides that persist even after over 7 decades of independence. The story begins with the end of British colonial rule in the Indian subcontinent. After nearly 200 years of domination, the British exited India in 1947, but not without leaving behind one of the most traumatic events in modern history: the partition. India was divided along religious lines into a Hindu-majority India and a Muslim-majority Pakistan. What was meant to be a peaceful transition quickly turned into one of the bloodiest episodes of communal violence ever witnessed. Estimates suggest that nearly 1 to 2 million people lost their lives during the partition riots, and over 14 million were displaced. Families were torn apart, cities engulfed in flames, and rivers turned red with blood. The trauma of partition left deep scars on both nations, especially among those who lost everything in the chaotic transfer of population. The bitterness of partition quickly translated into political hostility. Within months of independence, the two nations were at war. The First Indo-Pak War broke out in 1947 over the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. At the time of partition, princely states were given the option to join either India or Pakistan. The Maharaja of Kashmir, Hari Singh, a Hindu ruler of a Muslim-majority state, initially chose to remain independent. However, following an invasion by tribal militias from Pakistan, he acceded to India in return for military aid. India's acceptance of the accession and subsequent military action led to a full-scale war with Pakistan. The conflict ended in 1949 with the United Nations mandated ceasefire, which left Kashmir divided between the two nations, but unresolved as a political issue. This sowed the seeds of a prolonged territorial and ideological dispute that continues to fuel hostility to this day. The Second War occurred in 1965, again over Kashmir. After years of low-intensity conflict and cross-border skirmishes, Pakistan launched Operation Gibraltar, an effort to infiltrate forces into Indian-administered Kashmir to incite rebellion. The operation failed, and India responded with full military force. What followed was a bloody conflict that saw heavy casualties on both sides. Although the war ended in a ceasefire brokered by the Soviet Union and the United States through the Tashkent Agreement, the core issues remained unresolved. Both nations claimed victory, and both continued to arm themselves for the next confrontation, setting a dangerous precedent. In 1971, the third and perhaps most consequential war took place, not over Kashmir, but over East Pakistan. The civil unrest and political suppression of the Bengali population in East Pakistan led to a mass uprising. India, faced with millions of refugees pouring across its borders and responding to reports of widespread atrocities, intervened militarily. The result was the creation of a new nation, Bangladesh, and a humiliating defeat for Pakistan. Over 90,000 Pakistani soldiers were taken as prisoners of war, and the psychological blow of losing half the country dealt a deep wound to the Pakistani national psyche. This war not only redefined regional politics, but also deepened the animosity between India and Pakistan, embedding it further into their national narrative. Post-1971, the conflict evolved into new forms. While full-scale wars became less frequent, proxy wars, insurgencies, and terrorist attacks took center stage. The 1980s and 1990s saw the rise of insurgency in Indian-administered Kashmir, which India alleged was fueled and supported by Pakistan. Pakistan, on the other hand, accused India of human rights violations and political suppression in the region. This phase of conflict was marked by frequent cross-border shelling, militant attacks, and covert operations. The Kargil conflict in 1999 was the most significant military engagement since 1971. Pakistani soldiers and militants occupied high-altitude positions in the Kargil sector of Kashmir, leading to a limited but intense war. India eventually regained the positions, but the conflict shattered any illusions of a peaceful resolution in the near future. Beyond conventional military engagements, the India-Pakistan rivalry has played out on multiple fronts: diplomatic, cultural, and psychological. Both nations have consistently engaged in diplomatic sparring at international forums, each trying to garner support for its narrative on Kashmir. Cultural exchanges have been sporadic and often vulnerable to political tensions. Cricket matches, films, music, and people-to-people interactions, which could serve as bridges, have instead become arenas of nationalist fervor and mutual suspicion. The nuclearization of both countries in 1998 added another dangerous dimension to their hostility. While the possession of nuclear weapons may have deterred full-scale wars, it also introduced the threat of catastrophic escalation. The Kargil War occurred just a year after both countries declared themselves nuclear powers, showing that nuclear deterrence did not eliminate the possibility of conflict. Instead, it led to a doctrine of strategic ambiguity, where both sides engaged in brinkmanship while avoiding all-out war. Incidents like the 2001 Indian Parliament attack, the 2008 Mumbai attacks, and the 2019 Pulwama Balakot episode have pushed the two countries to the edge multiple times, raising global concerns about a potential nuclear flashpoint. The endless conflict has also exacted a heavy toll on the people. Generations in both countries have grown up viewing each other as enemies. School textbooks, media narratives, and political rhetoric have often portrayed the other side in negative terms. This has led to a cycle of hatred and suspicion that transcends borders and perpetuates itself through time. Defense budgets continue to balloon in both nations, diverting precious resources away from healthcare, education, and poverty alleviation. Soldiers die on both sides of the border. Families grieve, and yet the rhetoric of patriotism and vengeance continues. One of the most tragic aspects of this endless conflict is that it persists despite deep-rooted commonalities. India and Pakistan share language, culture, cuisine, and even familial ties. Urdu and Hindi are mutually intelligible. Bollywood films and Pakistani dramas have fan bases on both sides. Sufi music and poetry resonate across the divide. Despite this, walls remain higher than ever, built not just of concrete, but of ideology, propaganda, and political interest. International efforts to mediate or encourage peace have had limited success. The United States, Russia, China, and the United Nations have all played roles in facilitating dialogue, but without consistent pressure or commitment from both sides, such efforts often falter. Bilateral peace initiatives like the Agra Summit, the Law Declaration, and various back-channel talks have shown promise, but have been undone by events on the ground, often terrorist attacks or changes in political leadership. The question that looms large is, why does the conflict persist? One reason lies in the domestic politics of both countries. Political leaders often find the second keynote, the human cost is too high, refers to the deep and devastating toll the India-Pakistan conflict has taken on people from both sides since 1947. Beyond geopolitical strategies, territorial disputes, and diplomatic maneuvers, there lies a tragic human story that is often overshadowed by military rhetoric and political interests. The real price of this conflict has been paid by soldiers, civilians, displaced families, orphaned children, and traumatized communities. For over 7 decades, the human impact of the unending hostility has left permanent scars on generations, turning homes into battlegrounds and hopes into ashes. When India and Pakistan were partitioned in 1947, an estimated 14 million people were forced to migrate across newly drawn borders based on religion. Muslims moved to Pakistan while Hindus and Sikhs moved to India. This mass migration turned into a bloodbath. Estimates vary, but anywhere from 500,000 to 2 million people were killed during this period. Trains full of corpses crossed the border in both directions. Women were abducted, raped, or forced to convert. Children were separated from their families or murdered in front of their parents. This unparalleled humanitarian crisis marked the beginning of a tragic chapter in South Asian history. The emotional trauma of partition has echoed through generations, with families passing down stories of pain, loss, and betrayal. Every war fought between India and Pakistan in 1947, 1965, 1971, and 1999 has further increased this cost. In the 1947 war, thousands died on both sides, including local civilians in Kashmir. Families living near the line of control, LOC, were forced to flee their homes. The 1965 war, fought mainly in Kashmir and Punjab, resulted in over 3,000 Indian and 3,800 Pakistani casualties, according to official estimates. Beyond the numbers, each of these casualties represents a grieving mother, a fatherless child, a broken home. The 1971 war was particularly destructive in human terms. While the war led to the liberation of East Pakistan and the creation of Bangladesh, it was preceded by mass atrocities in East Pakistan. The Pakistan Army's crackdown led to the deaths of an estimated 300,000 to 3 million people, according to various sources. Around 10 million refugees fled to India, creating a massive humanitarian crisis. During the war, over 90,000 Pakistani soldiers were taken as prisoners of war, and thousands of Indian soldiers also lost their lives. The psychological impact on the people of East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, was immense. Families destroyed, communities uprooted, and women subjected to widespread sexual violence. For those in West Pakistan and India, the wounds of humiliation, anger, and grief deepened the existing mistrust and hatred between the nations. The 1999 Kargil conflict, though limited in scope, was another brutal episode. High-altitude warfare in the treacherous mountains of Kashmir resulted in the deaths of over 500 Indian and 350 Pakistani soldiers. For the families of these young men, many of whom were in their early 20s, the loss was not just personal but permanent. Mothers buried sons they had sent to defend the country. Wives mourned husbands they had just married. And children grew up only with faded photographs and medals that couldn't replace a father's embrace. That the human cost has not been limited to times of declared war. In the decades between and after these wars, countless civilians living along the India-Pakistan border and the line of control have suffered from regular shelling, sniper fire, landmines, and forced evacuations. Villagers in border areas live in constant fear, often having just minutes to run to bunkers with their children. Schools close down, crops go unharvested, homes are destroyed. Even when there is no active war, the threat of sudden violence lingers like a shadow over daily life. Children grow up with the sound of gunfire instead of lullabies. Entire generations are shaped by trauma, mistrust, and a sense of helplessness. The Kashmir region has particularly borne the brunt of this enduring conflict. For decades, militancy, cross-banded infiltration, and heavy militarization have made civilian life deeply insecure. Thousands of Kashmiris, both Muslims and non-Muslims, have died in violence. Civilians have been caught in the crossfire between militants and security forces. Disappearances, mass graves, curfews, internet blackouts, and the psychological toll of living in a conflict zone have led to widespread mental health issues in the valley. According to some health reports, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, and anxiety are common, even among children and teenagers. For many young Kashmiris, the sound of boots marching on roads is more familiar than the sound of peace. Terrorism has also extended the human cost of this conflict. The 2001 Indian Parliament attack and the 2008 Mumbai attacks, both linked to Pakistan-based groups, resulted in hundreds of civilian deaths. In Mumbai alone, over 170 people were killed and more than 300 injured in an attack that lasted several days. The victims were ordinary people, commuters, hotel staff, foreign tourists, police officers. In the aftermath, families were left broken, cities traumatized, and diplomatic relations between the two countries plunged into deep crisis. Such attacks not only claim lives, but also spread fear, deepen communal divides, and further strain people-to-people ties. The conflict has also claimed a less visible but equally tragic cost, the stunting of potential and progress. Billions of dollars have been spent by both countries on defense and arms procurement. India and Pakistan are among the top importers of weapons in the world. This is money that could have been used for schools, hospitals, clean water, poverty alleviation, and scientific research. Instead, generations have been denied the right to education, healthcare, and economic opportunity because their governments prioritize military buildup over human development. In Pakistan, a significant portion of the budget goes to the military while literacy rates remain low and healthcare infrastructure weak. In India, while urban centers grow, rural and border areas continue to suffer from underdevelopment, some due to militarization and neglect. there is also an emotional and spiritual cost. Hatred, once institutionalized, becomes a cycle. Children are taught in schools that the other side is the enemy. Media on both sides often exaggerates or distorts facts, demonizing entire populations. National pride becomes tied not to progress or compassion, but to aggression and revenge. This damages the moral fabric of society. Citizens begin to equate peace with weakness and war with honor. Veterans return home not to parades, but to trauma. Survivors of war or violence are often left to suffer in silence without counseling or support. The diaspora also suffers. Indian and Pakistani communities abroad, especially in the UK, US, and Canada, often find themselves caught in arguments or suspicion due to their country's ongoing hostilities. Instead of bonding over shared language, food, and traditions, they inherit the baggage of borders that were drawn thousands of miles away. This conflict divides not only territory, but also hearts. The human cost is cumulative. Every war, every skirmish, every terrorist attack, every propaganda video adds another layer of suffering. And that suffering doesn't just belong to India or Pakistan. It belongs to humanity. Because in the end, borders are drawn on maps. But grief knows no nationality. The mother who loses her son in Delhi mourns just like the mother in Lahore. The child who becomes an orphan in Srinagar cries the same way as the one in Karachi. So I ask again, how long will India and Pakistan fight? How many more generations must carry the burden of our fathers' unfinished wars? The blood of millions has already been spilled. The hopes of nations drowned in rivers of rage. Yet we still point guns across a border that once never existed. Science speaks of progress, of unity, of life beyond stars, and the Quran speaks of justice, peace, and brotherhood. But we still speak the language of division. It's time to write a new chapter. One not of conquest, but of compassion. We were not created to be enemies. We were created as nations so we may know one another, not destroy one another. The future is watching us. Let's not be remembered for what we destroyed, but for what we healed. Thank you for giving your heart, your time, and your ears to this message. May peace find your homes, may wisdom guide your actions, and may God grant both India and Pakistan the courage to choose peace over pride. Good luck to every soul working for truth, justice, and reconciliation. Your efforts matter, and never forget, even the longest conflict can end if even one heart dares to believe in peace.